I kind of envy those ancestors that really just got to like have reverence for the sky and the stars and God, and like get to really like actually, you know, like I do envy the simplicity of that, and I envy the experience um of like, I mean, I don't know, were they better at surrendering? I'm gonna tell myself that they were right now.
Welcome back to another session for the soul.
Yes, welcome everyone. So
Uh,
excited for this episode.
yeah, so we last episode was on how to have hard conversations, which was something that you guys, as the audience, really wanted to hear. And this episode is going to be on surrender versus passive inaction, which again is something that you guys really wanted to hear about. And I think this is like such a powerful and also really confusing concept sometimes. Like the concept of surrender can feel so confusing.
Oh, absolutely. And it can be terrifying. It can be so terrifying because I think you know, as humans, we desire the illusion of control, and we desire concrete moments and things that feel like tangible, and surrender is like is not I mean, it's not tangible. It's kind of the quality of it is so like um it's so like abstract, and can feel really just kind of weird, because it's like truly surrendering and letting go of like of perception, of perceived outcomes, of all these things, and like giving it, like letting it go into the universe and unfold. um and that can be really scary.
Very scary. If we look at surrender, I think, I mean, you kind of touched on some of the things that people think it is, right? Of like, oh, I don't want to surrender because that means I'm going to be giving up control, or I'm, giving up on life or giving up on fixing XYZ thing in my life. And that's not what it is. I think it's really easy to think of it like that because when you think of like surrender and like waving a white flag in war or something like that, like it's giving up, you're done, you're done fighting. And so we can think of it in those terms, like the terms that we've been that like the messaging around surrender that we've been given. We can think of it in those same terms in our own life and get it really confused with, well, if I surrender, that means I'm giving up. But really what it means is letting go of the need to like have the tight grip of control over your life, and to be able to take a step back and say, okay, I'm going to let these things unfold. I'm going to let my life unfold just as it should. I'm going to let this circumstance or this issue that I'm experiencing unfold exactly how it should in the timeline it's supposed to. And I'm going to focus on the things that I can control, because there are little things in our day to day life that we can control. And so it's that balance of how do I let go and allow the unfolding of these areas of my life and maintain control over the things that I actually can control, right? So like the little day to day things. So it's a delicate balance.
Oh, for sure. And you know, like you touched on something so important there of like, I think we like the word control, I feel like gets so it can be confusing, because when we think about what control is, it's like it's trying to like make something happen, right? And so like trying to determine and ensure that X, Y, and Z unfold. And so when we like look at like what's in our hula hoop and what's outside of our hula hoop, or like what's in our lane and outside of our lane, um you know, it's like, okay, I can't control how this person perceives me. I can't control the image they have of me. I can't control how someone feels about me, but I can control how I treat them and the access they have to me. So, you know, I think it's like you said, it's a divine balance. It's a dance of like surrender and still having agency for ourselves, and still doing the work that we want to do in our lives to achieve things or to be the person we want to be or have the life we want to have or feel a certain way. But also surrender, right? Like also recognize that like some things just aren't for us to control. And sometimes as humans, the desire to try to control other people, outcomes, scenarios, all of those things really come up. So when we talk about this in this episode, and like when I say that, I really am speaking to sort of the illusion of that I'm God,
Mhm.
because I feel like that's what it is like it's humans. And when I say God, I want everyone to know I could mean the universe, whatever you can assign the meaning to that, however that resonates with you. But sometimes we try to play like I can actually like we put a lot of power in ourselves to be like I can determine this. I can do this. And it's like I didn't realize that overnight I gained the insight of the universe and I now have the authority to dictate the actions and the domino effect of not only my life but all of the people in this situation that I'm trying to really
Mhm.
contain or have a concrete outcome or be able to box it up in, if that makes any sense. But it's kind of it's a very delicate and a very interesting concept, I feel
Mhm.
like.
It is, and I'm just thinking about like the modern world as well. How in the modern world it feels so easy to try and gain control in areas of life that previously, in like previous decades, previous centuries, where we didn't have the ability to be like, oh, okay, so this isn't working out the way that I planned in my life, and so I'm going to utilize this resource to make it happen. And that can be so many different resources. The easy one that's coming to mind, because just before we started this episode we were talking about fertility, and so that comes to mind. And I'm not saying this is a good or bad thing, but the ability to be able to say, I'm not, starting a family in the timeline that I thought, and so I have this resource that is the medical system that can help me get there. And so it's the ability to regain control in all these areas of life that we have, that previously, like in previous, you know, generations, we didn't have the ability to have access to creating so much control or having the illusion of that control, where I'm going to force all of these things to happen in the way that I pictured them happening or in the timeline that I pictured them happening or whatever it is. So, um, this is not limited, of course, to the medical system or to fertility or anything like that. But we have all these resources now where we can just kind of like um, manipulate in the way of like making changes to things to fit the picture that we have for our lives. And so it can be really hard to say, okay, I'm going to let go of that. I'm not going to try and force all of these things in my life anymore. Or maybe you start with just like one little area of life and say, okay, I'm going to try and relinquish control or having so much control in this area of my life and just see how that feels. See how it feels to just let it unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you touch on, I was thinking about this the other day, the complexities of the modern world and how they inform like the, like it's just a kind of different. Like I kind of envy those ancestors that really just got to like have reverence for the sky and the stars and God and like get to really like actually,
Yeah.
like I do envy the simplicity of that and I envy the experience um of like I mean I don't know, were they better at surrendering? I'm going to tell myself that they were right now because I think they might have been, just because like in the age of information,
Mhm.
uh we have all this like language to oh, this is why this is happening, because I have these symptoms, or this is what I've got going on because of this. 100 years ago, 500 years ago, that wasn't the case, right? So, it's really interesting to kind of examine it from that lens and kind of to look at it in that way and look at it like that. And I think that um, you know, the conversation of fertility is a really beautiful one to really like dive into that concept of surrender versus like passive inaction or um and what those are. I think a lot of people might not even know what the difference is or know um what they might think they're surrendering and actually just be like no.
Giving up. Yeah, and that's the difference, right? So like the surrender of like, okay, I'm gonna intentionally, and we have on our notes intentional surrender versus passive inaction. So intentional surrender of like, okay, I'm gonna take a step back very intentionally. I'm gonna relinquish control with intention while still controlling the things that I genuinely do have innate control over, but I'm also going to balance just letting it unfold how it's supposed to unfold. Whereas the passive inaction is giving up, feeling powerless, avoiding any sort of responsibility, and literally waving your white flag, right? That's what that is. That's what that picture is the passive inaction. So that's really the distinction here of like being very intentional about relinquishing that control and surrendering to, the divine plan or the unfolding of your life or the situation versus moving into a space of like, I'm done. I am powerless. I have zero control over my life. I have zero agency over, this situation, and I'm just giving up and giving in, and that's it. So there's a pretty big distinction that's happening there.
Yeah. That's I mean that's a huge difference. And one of them actually has like a really empowering quality, kind of how you touched on. Like, one of them is us saying, like, okay, I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to see what doors open. I'm going to see what unfolds, the unfolding of this versus, mm, I'm done. Like, versus that doesn't feel good when we're like, when we're in that place of just like, I am getting the like essence of like it's almost like kind of depressing. Yeah, the depression of like it's done. It is what it is. I can't change it. Like whatever. I'm done trying. I'm done uh you know, putting energy into this versus like no, I still from a place of love am going to like let go and let it unfold, but I still have, I still trust. I think trust is like such an important element of this. I trust that whatever is meant to happen, whatever the outcome is exactly the outcome that was meant for me.
Yep. Yeah, you mentioned it kind of like the passive inaction, almost aligning with feeling like depressed. And that's exactly what was coming to mind for me as well. Like this picture of this person who's like depressed, feeling apathetic, feeling like, what's the point? Like that kind of energy of, I'm just giving up. And that's it's a sad place to be, right? It's a painful place to be because it's coming from a place of like massive grief of the expectations that you had for your life or for a certain circumstance that aren't coming to fruition or that aren't coming to fruition in the way that you pictured. And
Mhm.
so instead of being open to the idea of like, this isn't what I pictured, but there's another plan in place that's probably going to be far better than what I pictured. And I'm going to surrender to that and just see how it unfolds. And this idea that you mentioned, Alicia, of like, being looking at surrender through a lens of empowerment versus disempowerment, I think is where the confusion sometimes comes in, because the word surrender can feel like, I'm so disempowered, I'm just giving up, and that's not what it is at all. It's actually incredibly empowering to be able to say, i'm going to let I'm going to take a step back, I'm going to relinquish this control, and I'm just going to see, I'm going to be open to seeing how this unfolds for me, which is really beautiful.
Yeah, that is really beautiful. As you were saying that, I'm like thinking about too, like how a lot of the time when we're resisting surrender or like we're in that place of like really wanting something, and I think like, whether that is like to have a baby or to like have a relationship work or whatever. And we're so hyper focused on like, how do I, like, I need this to happen and I'm going to do everything and I'm going to read every book and go to every doctor and we're going to go to couples therapy and we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do all of it. Sometimes I feel like what can happen, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't do that. I'm just saying that like what can happen when we get so stuck in that place and we're like resisting reality and resisting like surrender is that um we are actually missing sometimes like what's in the sidelines here, like what's in the outer vision. Like we're so focused on the tree in front of us and not realizing there's a whole forest through the trees. And a lot of times that's where like there's medicine, there's opportunity, there's something else, there's a greater meaning or lesson coming for us, coming to us. And when we're so like magnifying glass, hyper focused on one thing, it's hard to see what's in that bigger picture. What's the bigger picture here than this moment and this discomfort or this desire, because I think a lot of the time it comes from a place of deep desire and longing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think too, it can be easy to confuse the the idea of intentional surrender versus passive inaction. And I've personally experienced that just in my own fertility journey. And if you guys haven't listened to episode 1, I talked just a little bit about how my husband and I have been trying for a little over 4 years now to conceive. And it's been this really interesting process to look back on now through like a different lens, new perspective of this idea of when I've been surrendering versus when I've just kind of taken this position of giving up, and looking at these seasons of, kind of toggling back and forth between a place of surrender, of being like, okay, I'm going to surrender. I'm going to, give up control, give it to God, or have like the understanding that there's this divine timeline and divine plan and it's going to be far greater than mine and blah, 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 having that surrender mindset. And then I found myself really slipping into passive inaction of I'm kind of in a place of giving up. I'm just giving up. And I found myself in that place for about a year of doing nothing, not really taking any ownership, not taking a lot of agency and accountability of the things that I can control, and also not even really being in the space of like surrender. It wasn't a place of surrender for a season. And so recognizing how these things can kind of bounce back and forth of like, what does it feel like to genuinely be in a posture of surrender? Because, and I say the word posture, like heart posture, mind posture of surrender, because it's not about what you're doing or not doing. It's the way that you're showing up and like the intentionality behind what you're doing. And so just with my personal example of fertility, I'm currently in a season and have been in a season of, I do go to appointments for things like acupuncture and things that feel really supportive for my health and my overall well-being. But I'm not doing it from a place of having like this tight grip on control over the outcome. I'm doing it from a place of like, this feels really good. This feels really supportive. And I also know that this is going to unfold exactly how it should be. And so there's, this, it's a very delicate balance again of just being aware of where you're at and why you're doing what you're doing, or why you're not doing what you're not doing. So like having that inaction versus action, and what's the intentionality behind it? What's your heart posture behind it? And really getting honest with yourself about where it is that you're at in your situation, or just in the season of life that you're in.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful example, just because it is like it speaks to such a, I think, a thing that a lot of us maybe don't, we can relate to the desire, right? Like when you're talking about your journey with fertility, it comes from a place, right? Like with deep longing and deep desire, and this thing that really like is on your heart, right? And so understanding like what is the motivation, or like where you're coming from, and that is like so powerful. And it also changes the quality of your experience, and it changes the quality of also you know, um, your body's experience. Because when we're deep in either the place of like deep control and not really in a place of like, okay, like doing these supportive things because they feel really good when we're doing them from a place of grasping, that doesn't feel good. And then also when you're in that place of like, I can't do this, like maybe deep in the grief or deep in the sort of the, I guess depression is the word of it, like letting that kind of like consume or overcome, that doesn't really feel good either. So finding that middle ground, exactly like you just said, is the is a big piece of this and a big piece of that journey. And I think something we want to touch on here is kind of why it's so hard to surrender. Like, why is it such a hard thing to actually allow what's meant, and why we are resisting it?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is just the fear of the unknown, right? So when you're surrendering, you're relinquishing that control for the end result or the expectation or the picture that you had for your life. And when you're doing that, you're opening up the doors to all sorts of possibilities. And that can be really hard. You've talked or you've mentioned a lot about this idea of like a lot of these coming from a place of desire, and because that desire isn't being fulfilled in the way that you thought it was, there's a lot of grief that is on the other side of that. And so when you're in this season of surrender, allowing surrender to be present and allowing that grief to be present can be really helpful, and balancing like I'm leaning into the unknown. So I'm going to try and let go of the fear of the unknown, and also recognize that's really normal. Like that's really normal and natural to be a little fearful of the unknown, because we want to be able to predict things. We want to be able to control the outcomes. We want to know exactly what to expect and when to expect it. And so when we take a step back and just recognize like, okay, I'm going to let go of control. I'm going to actually surrender here, and I'm going to hold space for that grief that's also going to accompany the surrender, and I'm going to lean into the fear of the unknown. Like it's balancing all of those things at once. And in some ways, it's going against our like innate desire to want to predict so that our mind and body feel safe.
Absolutely. When you were saying that, I was thinking so much about the animal brain and like how, oh, duh, like this is our hard wiring, our animal instincts that have kept us alive for millions of years. We It served a purpose. In the modern world, it doesn't serve the same purpose, right? So a lot of the time, it can kind of do the opposite of serve that purpose, like today. And I think like really understanding how, like you said, how normal it is. I love like I love this topic. I have the word trust tattooed on my arm because there was a lot of years where I just like couldn't. And I had this teacher who literally, like, every time we would come to class, every time we'd work on things, we'd do all this work. And this was one of my more spiritually indigenous medicine based teachers. She always was just like, oh no, you have to, because I'd be like, these are my desires, this is what I want to do, right? And it would be things like, I want to travel by myself, I want to go do this, I want to like go take these big chances. And what if they don't work out? Like what if I can't do this alone? What if, like, I had all these objections? And she was just like, it actually got to the point where when I would ask a question before I was done asking it, I was like, oh, I just need to trust. Like, I just need to have trust that it, whatever unfolds, and that when I do step into this thing, I will be met with whatever I'm supposed to be met with, good, bad, indifferent. It's about the journey, it's about the process. And and there can be multiple types of grief, I think, when we step into the unknown. Because one, there's the grief of, maybe not getting what we desire. right? And that experience. And then there's also the grief of the things that change when we do step into the unknown, and sometimes things unfold in a way we never could have imagined, because life, happens in so many different ways. And and I think that it is kind of this, like when we were talking about doing this episode, it's like a sort of abstract concept in a lot of ways, because it's hard to neatly put a bow on the idea of surrendering and to trusting, and to to really like letting the unfolding happen, and recognizing that it actually takes a lot of awareness and work, because the hardwiring in our brain is like, but this is scary, like my instincts are saying like danger ahead, even though maybe it's not it's not that. Maybe what's going to unfold is something greater than we ever could have imagined, or maybe it's a lesson that we really are meant to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were saying that about the mentor and teacher that you were working with, I was thinking about how walking alongside people who have more life experience than you, who are older than you, wiser than you, who are maybe I I worked a lot with Native American clients in the past. In my previous career, and the importance of elders in the community was so prominent and was so beautiful to me. And that's what I'm thinking of here is this concept of like the elders in our life. And that doesn't mean necessarily that they have to be elderly people, but of course they're included. But people who are older than us and who have more experience and wisdom, their ability to look at a situation and to say, just trust it. Just trust the unfolding. Like, there's going to be something so beautiful for you on the other side of this, something better than you could have imagined, or a lesson that you learned that you didn't even know that you needed to learn. And having those people in your life to be able to just offer you that reassurance and that encouragement and that guidance, because they've been there, like they've walked that path, they've been through this experience or something like it, or just the overall experience of just knowing when you let go of control, when you relinquish like the death grip that you have on all these things in your life, and just say, I'm going to give it to God, to the universe, to whatever or whoever, and just say, I'm going to trust the timing of this. I'm going to trust the unfolding of this, and just realize that this is exactly how it's meant to be. And there's nothing wrong with my current situation, the way my life is right now, the circumstance that I'm in. It's exactly how it's supposed to be. And I'm going to trust that. And I'm going to trust that there's something so beautiful for me on the other side. So it's nice to have someone to walk through that with you.
Absolutely. Like, as you were saying that, it reminded me of my favorite, kind of one of my favorite phrases from this. And I this is like a topic that really excites me, and honestly has been a huge part of my journey, because whether it was like through human design, or the work I've done with the Keros people of Peru, and that I've studied with for the last like 3 years, and learned that work through, is that this, this divine concept of like, it's all happening for us. And there was a phrase that my human design teacher taught me, because when I was learning human design, there it kind of goes into different beliefs, but in short, like we all have kind of like themes that we're here to learn, or things that we're supposed to like master in a sense. And for me, like every single one of them was like, you're here to learn to trust the process, to trust this life and trust this path. And it's so interesting, because like I feel like outside looking in, a lot of the time people are like, oh, you like, but you like do all this stuff and like whatever. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm terrified. So I'm doing all this stuff, because if I didn't, like, what would happen? Or like if I don't, you know, take these chances, I'm afraid that I will not whatever it is, like be fulfilled, or I won't have the profound understanding that I crave so deeply. And so like I put myself in situations where the profound is like I'm like almost like forced through the canal. And something that one of my teachers always said to me was, you have to learn to jump off the cliff and trust at the bottom is a feather bed. And like that's the universe's hand, that's God's hand, is that feather bed that's like, okay, jump, surrender, like l- go into the unknown and I will catch you, and or you know, whatever will receive you. And I really want to be clear here with people too, is like sometimes what we need is not what we want, is not what, you know, it doesn't always feel good. Sometimes the lesson or like what's there for us is painful, is uncomfortable. And so remembering that um you might not, it might not feel like rainbows and butterflies and sunshine every time. It might be hard. There might be, you know, a big life changing like experience or something like that. Um, and then also like just in my own experience, like being so hungry for the profound so often, especially in my early 20s and my mid 20s, like just needing to understand and like wanting those experiences. Um, I started to have this, I had this experience where I was like doing all these things and realizing that, like, wait, the profound comes and goes. Like real life is real life. And recognizing that sometimes when we're so like when we crave that like, oh, that like this is it moment so much, that sometimes like it goes offline, you know, it kind of goes, it goes away. And I really experienced that. There was a couple of years where I was deep in this work of doing a lot of things and learning that surrender, and you know, going all in on myself and things I desired, like traveling by myself, going backpacking through foreign countries alone. All of those things were like me answering soul calls. And there would be moments where I was sitting there and I was like, okay, like now what, like bring me the fucking moment, like where is it? And realizing that like, dude, relax, this is real life. Like there are less profound moments. I just posted about this the other day. There are less profound moments than there are mundane ones, and find the magic in the mundane and make real life feel really good, and drink up every second of the profound ones when they come, because they're fleeting, you know. And trust isn't always going to feel like ah, it's not a destination. You know.
It's not a walk in the park usually, friends. Like it's a process that feels really super uncomfortable when you're in it. And just normalizing that and recognizing like this is, you know, how it generally goes when you surrender, when you put trust in something bigger than yourself, or a process that you're not familiar with, or letting go of any sort of outcomes that you have. That's really really uncomfortable. And also, you were talking about surrendering through the lens of not necessarily like we started this episode by talking about kind of the desire that we have, and surrendering to things maybe not going our way and things like that. But you mentioned surrendering from the place of like, I'm having this like soul call to do XYZ thing in my life, and I'm going to surrender to that, and I'm going to lean into it and do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I love that, because that's part of it, right? Like sometimes surrender is like, I'm going to go to this place that I have like, you know, a deep desire to go into. And I think maybe we all can relate to this in some way. Or maybe you're listening right now and you're like, gosh, I've been wanting to quit my job for a year or 5 years and go pursue the thing. And it's on your heart and your soul is like aching for it, is called to it. That's another place where you do get to practice that surrender. Like Kayla just, you know, reflected back, is really like Because when we deny that call, when we deny, the resistance, the unhappiness, I think you and I can both speak to that because of just like the career change we experienced, and having the call inside of ourselves to really do something else, and how that it was scary, right? Like it was scary to make that choice.
Very scary. And it is interesting to think about, like, again, whatever your sense of spirituality is, if you have like something's being put on your heart for a reason, and to deny that is to like not walk in, I hate to use the word obedience, maybe alignment would be a better word, of like walking in alignment with what's being put on your heart, because it's there for a reason. Like you're being called to do something, or to go on an adventure, or to connect with this person, or to move, or to whatever it is, right? You're being called to do this for a reason. And so when you have like this calling over and over, this yearning for something different in your life, or to go on this journey in your life, and you continually deny yourself that experience instead of surrendering to the experience and saying like, okay, I'm going to listen to like this little whisper in my heart that I've been having, that I'm going to go do this thing, or I'm going to make this change in my life. And it's going to be really scary, and maybe it doesn't all make sense right now to me, but at some point I'm probably going to look back and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad that I actually listened to the desires on my heart, and that I did this thing, because look at where I'm at now, or how I'm feeling now. And it's a really beautiful thing, I think, to just listen to those messages that you are receiving, that is your desire, right? And to actually, live in alignment with those things, and to just see how that unfolds, and just trusting like, I have no idea how this is going to turn out, um, but I'm gonna go along for the ride.
Oh gosh, absolutely. That, kind of brings us to like another reason we resist surrender, right? Is the attachment to control and the believing that we must manage every detail because like of that fear. And when you were saying that, I was thinking about this thing. I heard actually my boyfriend showed me this thing from a podcast he was listening to, about artists, and kind of how a lot of the time when we're creating something or when we're doing something, we like want every detail to like be what it is, right? Like it has to be like this thing, right? Instead of sometimes when like shit happens, life unfolds, all these things, like all these variables can come in, right? And imagine like the angel in your life or your spirit guide or whatever in your life who's over you, who's watching you, who's with you every step of the way, and you're like it's putting stuff in your path for a reason. It's like got a plan, and you're denying every single part of that plan because of the idea or the fear of like I have to make this happen, I have to be in control. And it was really actually when I was listening to that, when he showed me that, I was like, this is so, I laughed because there's been times, where I've done some work with like guides and whatever, and sometimes they're really annoyed with me a little bit. Okay, they have a sense of humor, and there have been moments where it's like I'm questioning, and one of my teachers, one of my spirit teachers, literally one time was like, I'm they're kind of like scoffing at you, like they were like, I don't know, there's a lot of hand tapping and like what, um and head shaking because like, and I was like, what? They're like mad. And she was like, mad's not the word, maybe like kind of frustrated that you just won't let them do their thing. And I was like, oh, so when he showed me that, it was like another reiteration of like, okay, I actually know this, and I actually know that like, you know uh there are we have people and things in our life looking out for us. And again, that's going to come forward differently for everybody based on like what their beliefs are. But you know it is kind of like when we think about it and we don't do certain things that we're being called to do or have been put on our heart, like Kayla said, we are denying that. And we have to like question what that's coming from. Is it from the attachment to control? Is it out of fear? Is it kind of like what we've been talking about here? Um, is it us being hyper vigilant to predict like the scary outcomes, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That hypervigilance, I think, again, if we just look at like from the nervous system and through the way that we, were raised and brought up into this world is very real for some people. So if you are someone who has like a tendency toward wanting to control every little detail in your life and who always wants to predict the outcome and control the outcome as much as you can, from the little details of your day to the really big details of your life, that's likely coming from a place of that hypervigilance of, in order to stay safe or to stay connected to the people in your life, you had to, try and control these things or try and predict, certain behaviors from people in your environment, your caregivers, things like that, that maybe felt really scary and maybe unpredictable at times. And so that predictability, the desire to maintain control or the illusion of control, feels really safe. It feels like it's what allows your body to kind of exhale and to be like, okay, I don't have to deal with this unpredictability in my life. My life was so unpredictable at one season in life. And so now I'm going to try and avoid that at all costs and maintain, that tight grip of control over my life. So I think it can be helpful to look at it through that lens too, of just the hypervigilance that can happen, why that hypervigilance might be there, like what are the origins of that, what's the story that's underneath that, and how can we lean into, giving up some of that control and also trusting that when I give up control in this way, I'm going to be safe. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be held. Like the feather bed that you talked about, right? I'm going to be okay in this. So it can be really hard, especially if that's like a deeply ingrained pattern. But it's definitely possible, and it's definitely worth putting in the work, because having that, desire to control every little outcome in your life is very fear based. It's very anxiety inducing. Like even though you kind of think this is somehow relieving my anxiety or this is relieving the fear in any way, but it's actually coming from a place of a lot of fear, lack of safety, anxiety. That's what it's fueled by. So being able to
Yeah.
just like exhale is amazing.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Thank you for putting like language to all of that, cuz I think our listeners will resonate with like that experience. I mean, I resonate with everything you just said, just in the sense of like the experience of like predictability and our nervous system, kind of that unconscious blueprint that is maybe informing like our inability to let life happen for us, not to us, but happen for us. And that's um the nervous system is such an important part of everything. And I love how it kind of weaves into even a conversation about something so abstract, right? Like so kind of like elusive, is that the word? It still is like, and there's these very like tangible, real parts of us that are playing a role in it.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're able to look back and be like, oh, I know where this came from. I know why I'm engaging in this pattern. It makes perfect sense now. Yeah, the nervous system is wrapped up into so many of these things, even these like obscure conversations of surrender and trust. Like what? But
Absolutely.
it's so relevant. One of the I don't know if we want to start talking about embrace like practices to embrace surrender, but one of the things that we have here is practicing some like breathwork techniques to be able to really allow your body to relax. And so if what we were just talking about resonates with you, that like hyper vigilance, that need for control, not wanting to let go of trying to predict and control the outcomes, literally being able to tap into your body's system and to tune into your breathing patterns. If you're trying to be in a state of control, your breath is probably pretty shallow, pretty quick, pretty high in the chest. And so being able to take that to the totally opposite approach of I'm going to breathe deep into my belly. I'm going to, activate that rest or digest state in my system so that my body, so that my mind can exhale, and so that I can just release any tension that's associated with trying to control every little thing in my life. So it's just a way to kind of soften, if you will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And it kind of like, I feel like our what the tools we have here to share how to embrace and how to lean into surrender all kind of like bleed into each other. Um, because like when you're doing breath work like that, right? And like when you're getting in your body more and kind of easing that tension, then it allows actually a place where you can tune in and start to tune into, gosh, where was I holding all of that? Where is my body holding this tension when, um, when I'm feeling the resistance of surrender, when I'm like needing control? How does that show up? And, um, what ways can I bring more attention and care to that place in me? Where can I, use that breath? You can take breath work and breathe into a space, right? So, like, if you guys are having like really intense tension in your shoulders, you can breathe into that space to release it. If the tension's in your lower belly, like kind of how Kayla was mentioning, you can breathe into that space and release it. Um, so kind of starting to tune in to where it shows up for you when you feel that resistance is another great way to start to embrace and kind of practice how to alleviate some of that stress and that tension in your body.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, I think we talked about this, in previous episodes, but the bidirectional relationship between our mind and our body. And so when our mind is wanting to control and be tense and, be fear-based and anxiety-based, it's communicating tension to our body as well, but vice versa is true as well. So when our body is tense, when we're holding on to a lot of tension, it's communicating to our mind that things aren't safe, that we need to control. You don't want to let go of, any sort of control that you do have. So it's this bidirectional relationship that's really important. So as you soften, I think it can be hard maybe for some people if you're listening and you're like, what? You want me to just like breathe? It's like, trust, like it's actually going to be super helpful because when you're getting your body into a state of releasing that tension and actually softening, you're then communicating to your mind, okay, everything's safe. We can soften up here as well and in your heart as well. So it's, it's this relationship that just kind of it goes
It's a
back and
two-way
forth.
Yeah, it's a two-way street, exactly. And that kind of brings us to the idea of like mantra work, and if you're someone who's really in your head and needs to be communicated with, or if sometimes like we need to literally say like to our bodies and to ourselves like, I am safe, I'm okay, like really saying those things. That's where mantra work can really come in. And if it's to surrender or to like practice this place of like feeling safe in sort of letting go, saying things like, I release the need to control everything, saying like, it's safe for me to trust the process. It's safe for me to trust the path. That can be so powerful. And it also like, it's naming it to tame it. We've talked about this before, naming the experience and taming it. So like, you know, I I feel really tense in my heart, or I feel a lot of tension in my shoulders, and I'm actually safe to release that. I'm safe to surrender. And kind of there's some, I'm sure there's a lot of beautiful resources on the internet, but for like mantra building, if that's something that anybody is who's listening is interested in. But it can be as simple as like, I you know what my therapist used to say to me, I'm not God,
Mm. Mhm.
and it's okay to let life happen. And literally, like, she'd have me say that sometimes because I'd be like, what do you mean? I can't control my whole family? That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
mantra work is really interesting because, again, it's one of those things where it's like, what do you mean you just want me to repeat this phrase or to say it out loud or in my mind? Like it just seems so simple, but really what it's doing is it's taking away those other thoughts that you're having, which are probably not so helpful thoughts, right? More negative thoughts. It's replacing those and starting to create those new neural pathways in your brain of these positive, more desirable, more effective, and adaptive thoughts. So taking your brain to a place of, I'm going to, let go of the control and trust that it's going to be met with blah blah blah. So having this mantra that feels really good and that's aligned with where it is that you're wanting to go can be really helpful. And also being able to pair it with breath work can be really helpful too. If you want to pair these things together, where on your inhale, you can say the first part of your mantra, and on your exhale, you can say the second part of your mantra. And again, what that's doing is it's getting your body in line with and in tune with the thoughts that you're trying to kind of ingrain into your mind and body. And it's creating this really nice alignment. And also, again, it's creating kind of a distraction from the other less desirable thoughts that you're having. So it's really helpful, and I think it's really helpful to pair those practices.
Absolutely. There's a statistic about how many thoughts we have a day, and it's like somewhere between like 80,000 to 100,000 thoughts a day. And of those, I think it was like 84% or something is unconscious. So like we're only aware of like a very small fraction of our thoughts that we're having. And of those thoughts, a lot of them tend to be on the more negative side of things because of the negativity bias, because of all these things, right? And so if we're not kind of tuning in and getting in check with that, like there's probably a lot of like unconscious like thoughts running rampant in a lot of our heads that really don't actually serve us and like our well-being and our health, just because of all the noise and all of the things, and kind of how Kayla just mentioned, like when we can just practice the more positive thought and practice the because we practice the negative thoughts whether we're aware of it or not, whether it was receiving a bad grade on a paper in third grade and beating yourself up for months. You practice that thought. I'm not good enough. I failed at this. We practiced it. So we have to practice the thoughts that create safety as well. And one of the mantras that you put in here, Kayla, is I trust what's meant for me will come. And I think that's so beautiful because it's so simple, it's so brief, and it's just saying like I trust what's meant for me will come. I trust it. And that paired with, breath work and tuning into the body, like if we practice that consistently, imagine what could unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you mentioned, we practice the negative thoughts that now come so automatically, right? Those automatic negative thoughts that can be so frequent and repetitious. And the same can be true for these more positive and adaptive thoughts of the more that you practice and train your brain to think about your life through this lens of surrender and trusting, in divine timing and all of those things, the more that you're training your mind and body to just automatically have those thoughts. And it's not going to take so much intentional effort in the future as long as you're committed to actually trying to create these new patterns, ingrain these new thoughts and experiences and ways of being into your mind and body. And I say mind and body because it's not just the mantra and the thought process, but it's also the physical experience of I'm going to start to operate in the world, like move and exist in the world in a way that's more relaxed, that doesn't have so much tension, that isn't always like so, that doesn't have like so much pent up energy and fear and anxiety and all of those things. So it's taking that holistic mind, body, spirit approach to surrender to your life, to certain circumstances in your life, and being able to just recognize the more that I practice this, the easier it's going to come. And at some point, this is just going to be my way of being. This is just how I exist in the world at this point.
Absolutely. I love that. That's so, it's believing the thought, it's really believing and integrating it. And I love a holistic approach on anything. So, I love that you said that. Um, yeah, our last little, um, note on how to sort of practice and embrace surrender is sort of the role of like having a higher power. And, you know, I get, I, we want to approach this with delicate hands because we totally understand that like everyone has different perspectives, different experiences, different beliefs, and all these things. But it really, I went through an atheist phase in college, you guys. It was the darkest 2 years of my life. Um, I was the most unhappy and most depressed and most lost I've ever been. And it was kind of like this rejection of something that didn't really resonate with me anymore. And like leaning into like science and all of this nonsense. I mean, no, let me be really clear, science isn't nonsense, but whoa. Um, we're gonna
Someone
get
clip that. Like, gosh.
we're gonna get canceled before we even got started. Um, but anyway, um, yeah, just the role of a higher power and finding something that feels good and resonates with you that you can be in community with, be in what to commune with, to talk to surrender stuff to give stuff to pray to have a, I don't care if it's the mountains, I don't
Mhm.
care if it's the stars, I don't care if it's God. Like just finding that thing that feels really good to you and is supportive to helping you, make sense of this little thing called life that is so complex and beyond our comprehension.
Mhm. Yeah, I think just like you said, you put it beautifully of like wanting to approach this concept really delicately because everyone has their own sense of spirituality or religious beliefs or somewhere in between and or no beliefs at this point of spirituality or anything of that sort and that's okay. I think just from my experience of working in the field of addiction recovery, the importance that was placed on spirituality was really interesting. And also learning, like, just from the research and science backed stuff of like the role that spirituality and the belief. I don't, again, we don't care what that looks like for you, but the belief in something or someone bigger than yourself and that there is a divine plan and that you can, engage in prayer or mantra or whatever that looks like. Um, how powerful and impactful that can be when trying to practice this concept of surrender. Because if you're approaching surrender through the lens of, but I don't actually have anything that's greater than myself or my life or whatever that looks like, it's really hard to fully lean into that and fully trust that there's going to be like this unfolding that is, greater than what you could have ever imagined. So it can be a helpful tool, I think, is I guess what we're trying to put out there of having some sense, whatever that sense is for you, of spiritual beliefs of some sort, something greater than yourself, a higher power, and the role that that plays in this overall concept of trust and surrender.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Kayla. I think that was, you said it really beautifully. It is like, um when we don't think that there's a rhyme or reason to it all, it can feel kind of like, well, then why would I do this? And yeah, just I think if I could pick one takeaway for everyone today, I would really be like, um, to find something that helps you feel the safety and security and the trust, and that like everything that's happening in your life is meant for you, and that you are safe, and your body can feel safe to actually trust that.
Beautifully said. I think that's a good place to end. So, thank you guys for listening. And we'll put in the show notes below where you guys can stay in touch on social media, all the places that we're putting out the podcast, YouTube, etc. If you guys want to give us a little like and follow and subscribe and all the things, that's super helpful and always appreciated. So, thank you so much for listening.